Good evening. I'm not going to bang my gavel. It just seems too late in the day for that. I don't want to upset anything. Thank you all for being here, and thank you for joining us. So I'd like to call this meeting to order, and will the committee secretary please call the roll?
Senator Cannizzaro, Senator Goycochea, Senator Harris, Senator Neal, Senator Wynn, Senator Severs-Gansert, Senator Titus, Chair Dondero Loop.
Thank you very much. And we have one bill to hear this evening, so I will open the hearing on Senate Bill 124. Senate Bill 124 revises provisions relating to the tax upon the net proceeds of minerals and royalties of mining operations. Committee members, you should all have a copy of the bill as well as the mock-up of proposed amendment 3515. I've asked fiscal and legal staff to present Senate Bill 124 to the committee. So we have at the table in front of us Michael Nakamoto, Brian Fernley, and Asher Killian. And gentlemen, when you're ready, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the Senate Finance Committee, for the record, I am Michael Nakamoto, Chief Principal Deputy Fiscal Analyst with the Fiscal Analysis Division of the Legislative Counsel Bureau. As the usual reminder, I am nonpartisan staff for the Legislative Counsel Bureau. I am not here to urge passage or oppose any piece of legislation. I am here to provide you information regarding the bill. My role here today is to go through an explanation of Senate Bill 124 and to answer any relevant questions relating to the bill as introduced. Mr. Killian and Mr. Fernley will go through the amendments, which are primarily technical in nature. So, this bill has to do with the net proceeds of minerals, which under current law is imposed at a rate of between 2 and 5%, depending on certain factors, including the ratio of net proceeds, gross proceeds to net proceeds. There are some exceptions to this. A geothermal establishment is taxed exclusively at the property tax rate of the district where that geothermal operation is located. If the net proceeds of the operation are in excess of $4 million, the rate is automatically 5%. Royalties, which is the portion of the proceeds that are paid for the privilege of extracting a mineral to the owner of a piece of real property, those are also taxed at 5%. And in any instance, regardless of that rate, the minimum rate that can be imposed is the property tax rate of the district in which that operation is located. The distribution of the tax is that local governments, cities, counties, and school districts get a proportionate share of the tax based on the property tax rate of that district. The state will get the 17-cent portion that goes into the Consolidated Bond Interest and Redemption Fund, similar to property tax. And then anything above those amounts goes to, under current law, the State General Fund, but beginning in FY24 will be going into the State Education Fund based on the actions of the legislature in the last session. So with that background I will go through sections 1 and 2 of the bill together. And this deals with the distribution of a certain portion of the net proceeds of minerals, and it's specifically the rate that is dedicated to K-12 education. Prior to the imposition of the pupil-centered funding plan, the Nevada plan required certain proceeds, including the net proceeds of minerals tax from what would be the 75-cent rate, to be distributed directly to the school district, and it was treated under the Nevada plan as local revenue for those school districts. And the mechanism that was used for that distribution was the same as any other portion of the net proceeds that was to local governments. So in NRS 362.170, there is a requirement that all of the local revenues from the net proceeds of minerals be sent to the county, and the county treasurer is then required to apportion those proceeds based on the property tax rates to the city, counties, cities, the school district, anybody who has a property tax rate, and the county treasurer got to keep a 5% commission of those proceeds, of which 3% was deposited in the county general fund and 2% are given to the county assessor for technology improvements and upgrades in their office. So under SB 543 of the 2019 session, which was the bill that changed the funding formula from K-12 or for K-12 education from the Nevada plan to the PCFP, that money, instead of going to the school districts, now is required in Section 2, subsection 2 of that bill. That money is instead required to be deposited in the state education fund. Section 2, subsection 2 of SB 543 is NRS 387.1212, which we'll talk about in a little bit. What did not change, though, was the mechanism to actually get this money to the state education fund. Under current law, the Department of Taxation is required to designate the amount that is supposed to be sent to the counties. All of that money, including the school district money, is sent to the counties, and the county then apportions out that amount, all the amounts as they would, except that 75-cent portion that was previously deposited or sent to the school districts is now sent back by the county to the state and deposited in the state education fund, and they get to keep 5% as well. So it is an instance where the law really did not change, and the money that is sent to the state goes through the county first and sent back to the state, and they keep the 5%. So sections 1 and 2 of the bill rectify that issue, and instead of having this revenue sent to the county and then back to the state with them keeping the 5%, the Department of Taxation is required to deposit that money directly into the state education fund. Thereby passing this, or bypassing the county, and by implication, removing the ability for the county to retain 5% of those proceeds for the various purposes outlined in NRS 362-170, subsection 2, paragraph C. So Sections 3 and 4 of the bill deal with a separate issue related to the net proceeds of minerals tax, and this actually goes back to Senate Bill 3 of the 31st special session from July of 2020. So prior to the passage of SB 3 back in the 31st special session, for the net proceeds of minerals tax, the operators who are subject to that tax would pay their tax based on their actual mining activity in the prior calendar year. So on or before May 10th of each year, they would remit their payment to the Department of Taxation. For the state portion, for the local portions, all of the net proceeds was due on that date for the activity in the prior calendar year. SB 3 of the 31st special session, though, required an additional payment to be made by the operators based on estimated payments for the current calendar year, and this was to begin in calendar year FY21. So in FY21, there was a payment that was made, and this is for the general fund portion only. They were required to make an estimated payment for what they believed their mineral activity would be for calendar year 21 on or before March 1st of 2021. Then later in the year, they would make the actual payments for calendar year 2020 on or before May 10th, 2021. The effect is, in essence, getting 2 years' worth of revenue for the state general fund in FY21, the estimated payment for calendar year 21, the actual payment for calendar year 20. And the way that the bill was drafted is this prepayment would continue with the ability for the mining operations to true up at the end of the year once they knew that activity from the prior calendar year. But they would continue to make this estimated payment on or before March 1st of 2022, 2023, and then for 2024 they would stop making that payment. So the way that this was approved And the way that it was forecast to occur is we would receive, in essence, that double payment in FY 2021, and then we would receive the estimated payments that would go into FY 22 and FY 23, but switching it back when it was going to be switched back under SB3 would result in zero revenue being collected for FY 2024 because there would be no estimated payment made for calendar year 2024. Which would have resulted then for your fiscal staff going in front of the Economic Forum, we would have forecast no revenue for the net proceeds of minerals tax to the state general fund in FY 24. The legislature, however, in AB 495 from last session, decided effective for FY 2024 to have this portion of the net proceeds of minerals tax go instead to the state education fund rather than the state general fund. So the forecasts that were approved by the Economic Forum were under current law that said that there is no revenue going to the state general fund from the net proceeds of minerals tax in FY 24 or 25, but the forecast that was a consensus forecast done between the Fiscal Analysis Division and the Governor's Finance Office also says that there is no net proceeds of minerals revenue coming from this particular portion of the tax in the state education fund in FY 24 either. So in essence, that hole, so to speak, that was created by the passage of this bill got transferred to the state education fund instead of the state general fund. Sections 3 and 4 go back into sections 8 and 12 of SB 3 of the 31st special session and change the effective date or the expiration date of that prepayment from June 30th, 2023 to June 30th, 2022. The effect of that is that on or before March 1st of this year, the mining operations will not be required to make that estimated payment. So in essence, it's moving that whole to this year. They would pay their actual or their calendar year 23 tax based on or before May 10th of next year of 2024, and it would be credited to the state education fund as required by law. So those two sections of the bill effectuate that change and essentially moves that revenue whole from the state education fund in FY24 to the state general fund in FY23. So that is my part of the presentation of the bill. I would be glad to answer any questions related to that. Otherwise, I can turn it over to legal. Thank you.
Are there any questions? You know what, would you like to hold and we'll hear the amendment and then we'll go to questions and do it all at once? Will that work for you? No, I think so. Okay, all right. All right, we'll go ahead and hear the amendment first. Thank you.
All right, thank you. My name is Brian Fernley. I'm the Legislative Counsel with the Legal Division of the Legislative Counsel Bureau. As Mr. Nakamoto stated, we are nonpartisan staff, and we neither support nor oppose any particular piece of legislation or policy. What we have submitted is a proposed amendment, 3515, to Senate Bill number 124. The amendment is intended to ensure that the net proceeds of minerals tax is distributed in accordance with the Nevada Constitution and to ensure that the provisions of the statute are clear and concise and drafted in a way that carries out legislative intent to implement the people-centered funding plan with respect to the net proceeds of minerals tax. So that it is purely a technical amendment to ensure that the statutes are clear, to ensure that the statutes operate as intended by the legislature, and to walk through the substantive aspects of the amendment. I'll turn it over to Asher Killian.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Asher Killian, Chief Deputy Legislative Counsel, Legal Division of the Legislative Counsel Bureau, and to avoid repeating the disclaimer for a third time, I also neither support nor oppose any legislation as a member of your nonpartisan staff. So there are three technical changes contained in this amendment. And each is, as Mr. Fernley mentioned, each is intended to ensure that the net proceeds of minerals tax is distributed into the state education fund and the education stabilization account in a constitutional manner, and to clarify the provisions of the people-centered funding plan to ensure that they are interpreted in line with that intent. The first technical change, Mr. Nakamoto touched on how money moves from the net proceeds of minerals tax into the state education fund. Under existing law, NRS 387-1214 subsection 6, once that net proceeds of minerals money moves into the state education fund, it's then directed back to the appropriate school districts as it had been previously under the Nevada plan. That's done in two ways. In subsection 6, paragraph A, to the extent that the school district is entitled to any money under the pupil-centered funding plan, that net proceeds of minerals money is the first money distributed to the school district to satisfy that school district's entire apportionment under the pupil-centered funding plan. Then under paragraph B, to the extent that the district would have been entitled to more money from the net proceeds of minerals than they would be entitled to under the pupil-centered funding plan, existing law creates a continuing appropriation to the county school district of that excess amount as a continuing appropriation to mitigate the cyclical nature of the mining industry. So the county school district continues to receive the entirety of the net proceeds of minerals tax. It just flows through the state education fund first, so it's accounted for as education dollars and then distributed to the county school district. The first technical change is making it explicitly clear that that second kind of money, the money that goes back to a county school district to combat the cyclical effects of the mining industry, so the excess money from net proceeds of minerals above and beyond the pupil-centered funding plan. Section 2.3 of this bill makes it explicit that that money is not subject to reversion to the education stabilization account. Ordinarily, there's a provision under existing law that if a district maintains a reserve at the end of each fiscal year of more than 16.6%, the money in excess of that amount would be reverted back to the education stabilization account. This change in section 2.3 makes it explicit that that excess mining money never reverts back to the education stabilization account. It remains with the county school district that received it. The second technical change is, as mentioned, there is a provision of existing law that a county school district's ending fund balance in excess of 16.6% gets turned back over to the state to go into the education stabilization account. There was a transitory provision in SB 543 of the 2019 session, Section 77, that accounted for a situation where there were some school districts that already had a reserve of more than 16.6%. And what that provision of law said is, to the extent that you have a reserve that's already higher than 16.6% as of the end of fiscal year 2020, that level of reserve is your new base rather than 16.6%. And if you exceed that level of reserves in future years under the pupil-centered funding plan, you have to turn that excess over to the education stabilization account. And to the extent that your reserves drop below that amount, it effectively kind of ratchets down to that new level until you hit the 16.6% that applies to all of the other school districts. As you can tell from that explanation, it's a little bit of a complicated mechanism. And that bill was passed in advance of the pupil-centered funding plan becoming effective, which is why that mechanism was a little bit complicated. Section 2.3 of this bill revises that mechanism since we now know that the pupil-centered funding plan is in effect and we know what date it became effect, to instead treat any money that the school districts received on or before June 30th, 2020, which was the end of that benchmark year, as their money. It's not subject to being turned over to the education stabilization account under any circumstances. And instead, going forward, to the extent that any school district keeps a reserve of 16.6% or more of pupil-centered funding plan money, that excess would need to be turned over to the education stabilization account. So it basically gets rid of the old, very complicated ratcheting way of setting this amount by letting the districts keep the money they received before the pupil-centered funding plan and only applying the 16.6% limit going forward to pupil-centered funding plan dollars. Finally, the last technical change is a provision of existing law in NRS 387-1214 subsection 6 declares that the money that a county school district receives from net proceeds of mineral revenues is deemed to be the first money received by that county school district from the people-centered funding plan. The intent was always that this was an accounting measure to make sure that they are the first dollars in and the first dollars out, so that when we arrive at the end of the fiscal year, we know what dollars are available for potentially being turned back over to the education stabilization account if the district keeps an excess reserve. This change in section 2.5 of the bill makes that explicit, that not only are these dollars from the net proceeds of minerals the first dollars into the county school district fund, they're also the first dollars spent out of the county school district fund. So simply an accounting measure to make sure that that's being carried out the way that it was intended to be carried out in SB 543 of the 2019 session. So, Madam Chair, that covers the three technical provisions in this amendment to SB 124, and we would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. And now we'll go to questions. And I think Senator Goicoechea, are you champing at the bit?
Not really, but
Okay. Do you want to wait? I'm just,
I can ask the question.
okay, go ahead, please, sir.
Thank you. And I guess it's, as I told staff, I'm really picking nits with this. But my concern is, as we talk about the 5%, clearly that goes to the county treasurer, and you're going to scrape that commission off. My problem with this is 3% of that clearly goes to the treasurer. But the 2% that goes to the county assessor, even though these properties and net proceeds are centrally assessed, he is entitled to that 2% technology fee. And I don't believe we have the ability to remove that. It's set in statute. I mean, we created the technology account, and yet as we're sweeping these revenues under 543 and the new purposeful funding program, again, I don't believe you can access that 2% that goes to the technology fund. That would be my argument. And again, we're not talking a lot of money, but again, we shouldn't have the ability to something that is statutorily going to another agency who is charged with, the assessment of that property by statute is entitled to that 2% technology fee. Again, it's not a pass-through to them. That is their technology fee that is responsible for assessing those properties, whether it be the mine properties and/or which ultimately ends up being the net proceeds. So my argument, Madam Chair, and I hope I made some sense with that. And again, I know we're not talking a huge amount of money. It's just the principle, and I never liked to transfer in the first place. Sorry. Thank you.
It's okay, sir. Is there any response? Is there needed any response and clarification? If not, that's okay. I just wanted to make sure you had a minute if you needed to.
Sure. I think what we can say is that the 5% commission was enacted by statute approved by the legislature, and so the legislature would have the authority to redirect it or remove it in this case. And in this case, it's the dollars that are supposed to go into the state education fund are no longer going to be transferred to the county just to be transferred back to the state education fund. They're going to go directly into the state education fund. And so that's the mechanism by which the 5% is no longer collected.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Senator Neal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Mr. Nakamoto, do you know how much the 2% is?
Thank you, Madam Chair, to you and through you to Senator Neal. Having just sat and done the calculation really quickly because I anticipated the question would be coming, based on information that we were provided by the Department of Taxation on the actual transfer to the counties for the 75-cent portion, 2% of that revenue in FY 2022 would have been approximately $566,000.
Is that to, follow up, is that to one county or across 17?
Madam Chair, Michael Nakamoto, for the record, to you and through you to Senator Neal, that is combined to all 17 counties.
Got it. So a division problem. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Additional questions? Senator Gansert.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just had one more question. So that 5% off the top, is that for all the money that is transferred, but we're actually just excluding the 75 cents now? So there's a remaining portion of the net minerals, proceeds of minerals tax that's the 5% still exists on, so the 3 and the 2 still exists on the majority of it, but not the 75 cents?
Madam Chair, to you and through you to Senator Gansert, Michael Nakamoto for the record, that is correct. The other portions of the net proceeds that would be distributed for county, cities, any other rate excluding the 75-cent rate would still be subject to that withholding of the 5% by the county treasurer before it's distributed.
Thank you. If I can just, do we know how much that is? Thank you.
I don't know.
Okay.
That is something that I would have to look into for
Okay,
you.
thank you.
Thank you very much. Senator Tice.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think I just wanted on the record to clarify, and we did reach out to Mr. Thorley earlier today, because we wanted to make sure, or at least I did, and I think Senator Gokachia did also, that this would not prohibit the counties for using bonding in the future capacity, because we were concerned that it might affect that, but apparently they can still, for capital improvement projects, et cetera, pass bonds, et cetera. This won't affect any of that capacity, correct? And debt services.
Madam Chair, to you and through you to Senator Titus, Michael Nakamoto for the record, we do not believe that it would preclude a county from issuing bonds, the redirection of this money, because it only affects that 75-cent portion. It does not affect any debt rate that may be issued.
Thank you. I'm going to, if I might, Senator Gokachia has an additional to that one.
As the chair, I'll call on Senator Gokachia.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I appreciate the follow-up. We're not really talking about the county's capability because, again, they would have it. The school district, would they have the ability then to come back and either issue a bond or do debt service after the passage of this? I'm not so much county, but I got to talk school district.
Madam Chair, to you and through you to Senator Goycochea, Michael Nakamoto for the record. As a clarification, yes, we do not believe that the school district would be precluded from doing that.
Additional questions? All right. If there are no additional questions, you gentlemen can step back and we'll see if there's any testimony in support of Senate Bill 124. Any opposition to Senate Bill 124? Anybody neutral? Oh, I knew I'd get a taker. Perfect.
Good afternoon, or good evening, everyone. Members of the Senate Finance Committee, my name is Nikki Bailey Lundahl. I'm here representing the Nevada Mining Association. The Mining Association is proud to be your partner in education, creating quality jobs, and helping finance critical state services. The last 3 recessions, the mining industry has taken the extraordinary steps to prepaying our taxes. We do this to help bridge the gap between economic crisis and budget shortfalls. Having a taxpayer prepay taxes is always a complicated feat. If ending prepayment now helps the state, we see no issue with it and are neutral on the bill.
Thank you very much. All right. If no one else would like to make public comment, committee members will go into the work session. And we will consider Senate Bill 124. Mr. Thorley, will you please summarize the bill again for the committee?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Wayne Thorley for the record, LCB Fiscal Analysis Division. Usually when we do this, there's several days or weeks between when the bill is heard and work session. Now we've got a couple minutes, so.
Thank you, Mr. Thorley.
Would you like me to do a summary, or are we still, as all the committee members, good? Like, we just heard this?
I think we're good.
Okay.
I don't see any quizzical looks.
Okay.
We'll probably have another question and discussion.
Okay, perfect. All right, then I will entertain a motion to pass Senate Bill 124.
So moved.
So moved with the proposed amendment.
With the proposed amendment.
Thank you very much, Senator Nguyen. A second by Senator Harris. Any discussion? Senator Gocochea.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Now, I believe as we move these dates and pushed everything back into March 1st of 23 now, that did create a $70 million hole that would then have to be appropriated out of general fund. Now, is that in this bill, or when are we going to deal with that?
Wayne Thorley for the record. Is that okay? Yeah. I believe you're referring to the general fund hole that Mr. Nakamoto mentioned would be approximately $70 million this fiscal year, FY23, based off of existing fund balance in the unrestricted general fund. That it would just reduce the amount of money that's available there. It wouldn't reduce any money that's already been appropriated by the legislature for any purpose.
All right, thank you. So then, as I understand it, again, it would just be a smaller ending fund balance in the general fund and wouldn't require an appropriation.
That is correct.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Any additional discussion? Senator Titus.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the opportunity. I certainly appreciate all the folks in the room and the brief amount of discussion that we've had over this today, and with the amendment just be opposing, but I'm going to be a no on this. I just feel we have not had a time to reach out. I have not had enough time to reach out to counties that I feel are going to be affected and would need more information. Perhaps I can come around, but at this point I'm going to be a no. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Gocochea.
All right. I will support the bill out of committee, but I want to reserve my right to vote against it on the floor as I get more information. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Okay, seeing no more, go ahead,
you.
Senator Gansert.
Thank you. I will support the bill and reserve my right. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, so seeing, I think everybody's had a chance to process that. All those in favor, say aye. All those opposed? Please show that Senator Titus is a no. Motion passes. The last item on tonight's agenda will be public comment. So I'll start with public comment here in Carson City. Seeing none, I don't believe we're live to, are we live to Las Vegas? There you are. No, we're not. Yeah, okay. I don't think we're live to Las Vegas. All right, we'll go to BPS, please, when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair Don Barrowloop. The public line is open and working. However, there are no callers at this time.
Okay, we'll give them just a half of a second to make sure.
Certainly. Thank you, Chair. BPS standing by.
Okay, I'll check back in with you, BPS.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Chair. The public line is open and working, and there are still no callers at this time.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you for your time tonight. So with that, committee members, that completes our business for this evening, and this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, and thank all of you for being here with us. Thank you, staff.